had a recent request to go outside and cook a pizza, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to start by making my own homemade pizza sauce, and that's going to be a bit of a process, so I'm going to take you through it, but, but it's more inspirational. If you want to do this and cut corners and get jarred sauce or whatever, that's totally cool with me. But let me show you how I do this. So I'm going to start with some really nice Roma tomatoes, and the riper and redder the better, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just top these things. We get them all topped here. And then I'm going to score the skins. I have a hot pot of boiling water standing by because we're going to de-skin these guys. So these are topped. I'm going to take my paring knife here, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to score the skin just like this. And I'll do that in two directions, so they have 4 pieces of skin scored. So there's one, just like this, just barely under the skin. Alright, putting these in this hot boiling water. We're going to let those stew for a few minutes. Alright, I let these things go for a good 4 or 5 minutes. I'm going to cut the heat off, and you can see the skin's releasing nicely from these things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and move these over to a cold water bath. I usually would put ice in there, but I don't have any ice available, so cold water will be fine. The purpose here is just to get the heat off of them so I can handle them. Okay, so the next thing that's going to go into our pizza sauce is we're going to put some onion. I'm using a white sweet onion here. And I don't need a whole lot, again, because I'm not making a whole lot of sauce, but I'm going to put, I think 2 rings probably ought to do it. So we'll go ahead and we're just going to coarsely chop these up. Okay, good enough. So there is our onion, and then I don't have any fresh garlic, so I'm going to use some diced garlic that's done in a jar, and I've also got some bay leaf we're going to put in there, some olive oil, and we're also going to add some oregano in. So let's go ahead and put this into the saucepan, and we'll start this stuff simmering. Okay, so we've got our tomatoes now in our saucepan, and right here I've mixed up all of our dry spice ingredients. So I went ahead and added some dried basil in here. So we have dried basil, everything in small amounts, by the way. Also oregano. I've got a couple of bay leaves in there, some salt, some black pepper. We'll go ahead and dump that in there. And these spices I will probably adjust as we go through the cook. I'm going to go ahead and add the onions in. And I'm going to put a good amount of garlic in here also. And then we're just going to add a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And this is going to go to the stove top, and we're going to let this simmer for about an hour. Okay, so while we have our sauce over here doing what it's got to do, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the dough for our crust. So we'll get over here to the stand mixer and get that done. Okay, in the stand mixer here I've got 2 cups of bread flour. You can also use all-purpose. I prefer bread flour, it's a little more crispy. And I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of olive oil and some dry ingredients, which is going to basically be two teaspoons of active dry yeast, a teaspoon of salt, and about a half a teaspoon of sugar. So we're going to throw that in, and then we're going to get this to mixing with the dough hook, and I'll be slowly adding in 3/4 of a cup of 110-degree water. Okay, I'm going to spray some oil in here. So we're going to throw our dough in here, cover it with saran wrap, put it in a comfortable spot and let it sit until it rises to about double its size. That's probably going to take about an hour. So there we go. Okay, we've had about an hour and 20 minutes of all this stuff coming together, so we're going to go ahead and take these bay leaves out. Now this first part of the cook on this sauce, we have it covered because the idea is to get everything soft, everything that's dry to be hydrated, and then we wanted all those flavors to kind of come together, so that's what we did. I'm having trouble finding that other bay leaf. Where'd it go? There it is. So we'll get that out of there. Okay, so now we're going to emulsify this. You can do this in a blender. Okay, so we want this really smooth texture just like that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this back up to a simmer, and we want it to cook for another hour to 2 hours and slowly reduce that liquid out of there so we get a nice sauce that will sit on top of our crust. Okay, so we've got this reduced down to where we want it now. It's been about an hour and 40 minutes, and we were running at about medium-low heat to low heat. And you can see what it looks like now. Everything's kind of stiffening up and a few bubbles going. I'm going to go ahead and move this around a little bit. And yeah, see how it's getting kind of dry, and that's what you want. And so now that we've got it down to this level, we're going to add a little bit of sugar in there. We didn't add the sugar earlier because sugar burns so easy, and we really kind of need it to offset the acids. So cooking it down like this helps to break those acids and stuff down. And if you had been here to taste it up to this point, it's very savory but still pretty acidic, and that's typical when you're working, you know, with tomatoes. And so the sugar that goes in here is really just to calm that acidity down. You don't want to really make your sauce sweet. You just want to find that balance to calm down the acids and just make it nice and savory and just right. So we're going to put a little bit in there. I put about half a tablespoon in. I'm going to move that in. I think I'm going to go ahead and, well, I kind of want to cut the heat now. I'm going to put it on low. Really move it in there, and I'll give you a spoon. I'll give it a little taste, and if you happen to go overboard, you can add a little bit of salt back in to offset too much sweetness, but you don't want to go down that path too far. Our dough is ready to go. It's a little more than doubled in size, so we're going to go ahead and make us pizza. Throw a little flour here on the surface. Clean surface, mind you. We'll just spread it around there a little bit. Give us room to roll this dough out. We've got our rolling pin. Flour it up a little bit. Now this dough, a little tacky, so we're going to use flour to get it to the consistency that we want. Sprinkle a little on there. We want it to be kind of stiff. You know, we've got a pizza dough could be a little temperamental when it's not right. You want to get just that right stiffness about it, because once we build our pizza on this, we've got to transfer this from whatever we have it on into or onto the pizza stone. So we want it to be a little bit stiff. We don't want to have to fight this. I'll tell you, if you ever try to do it with super loose dough, man, that pizza just takes on a life of its own, and it's just kind of over at that point. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of pinch these seams together like that. I think that's still enough flour down there to do what we got to do. And we have put a little flour on our rolling pin. So we're just going to roll this into as close to a circle as we can get it. This in the freezer for a little bit. That's going to help stiffen this up, make it a little more solid, and that's going to give me an opportunity to get my countertop cleaned back up again. And then we're going to build a pizza. Okay, so let me show you what we're working with here. I've got our wonderful pizza sauce that we made, and in this little bowl here I got a little bit of Parmesan cheese, semi-dry. Right here we've got some mozzarella cheese. And over here I've got some thinly sliced brown mushrooms, some julienne red bell peppers here, and we've got some thinly sliced onion, pepperoni, and some salami. And I think that's going to be good enough for this one, okay? You know, it's pizza. Use your imagination. Put on there whatever you want. So let's go ahead and pull this crust out of the freezer. And that crust is set up pretty good now where it's going to be manageable. You can see I can grab it and move it around. And it's not even over yet. All right. So let's start with getting the sauce on there. Put a good amount of sauce, but you don't want to make it too wet. So I'm going to put a couple of heavy-duty tablespoons on there, and I'm just going to spread this out all over the pizza, all over the crust. With here I got a cold crust now, and so it's not going to be giving me the business when I'm trying to work with it. And I've got a chilled sauce, so it's a little stiffer than it would be, and it's allowing me to lay it down as thick as I want to, and not quite as blotchy as you would have on a warmer sauce, where it just kind of runs. And it also makes you know, it reacts with the dough underneath. The heat does. It makes it even harder if you're going to transfer it. If you're going to bake it on this, I mean, you can totally bake it on one of these things, and you wouldn't have to worry about it, but I'm not, so I think that looks good. That's a lot of sauce. I like a lot of sauce. think we're good to go, folks. All right, now this, I'm just gonna kind of press it down a little bit so everything kind of stays in place, because it gets to go, you guessed it, back in the freezer. Because I want it to remain, I want to be able to handle this still. So I don't want this to come up to room temp. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it back in there, and it's only gonna be in there long enough to get that Weber kettle good and hot, okay? So that's the next step. So we'll put this in the fridge, we'll go out back. All right, here is our fire configuration. So I got a whole chimney of charcoal, one of them big Weber chimneys, and I just lined this whole back side all the way about halfway up both sides with hot charcoal. I'm gonna throw in a couple of chunks of wood because we want to say we got a wood-fired pizza here. Now I'm gonna set the pizza stone right there. I'm gonna let it get good and hot. And we'll go ahead and put the lid on this. I want to get this thing up around 400 degrees. So I'm going to start by opening the vent completely. Okay, I like to throw a little cornmeal down. I've been just rotating this stone every few minutes. All right. Now let's get this pizza on there. Beautiful. Okay, we'll close it up and let her go to work. You look in those vent holes, you see a little flame going down. That's some of that cherry wood I put in there. And so what I cracked that open a little bit, so that is going to allow enough airflow for the pieces of wood to keep burning. Have a nice little flame in there while we got our pizza cooking. Alright, that's a wrap. We got this sucker off. It looks absolutely perfect. And now I'm going to get me some. Beautiful thing. Crust could be a little crispier on the bottom, but that's alright. Everything else perfect in texture. That's some dang good pizza right there. So, like I said before, if you don't want to make your own homemade sauce and all that, or even if you don't want to make your own crust, you can go out and buy some pre-made crust and get you some jarred. But get out there and do it. Get your pit going. Jump on to Amazon or something. Order you one of these pizza stones, and go out there and do some wood-fired pizzas. So until next time, go outside and cook. You gotta have a bite of this.